Woohoo! We are live, and this is Math 60 Intermediate Algebra, and this is the new Sharktopus puppet. Let me bring him in. There we go. Try to get a little bit of focus there. Woohoo! Okay, so this is the Math 60 Chapter 1 practice test. So let's talk about what does it mean to be taking a practice test? Well, the first thing is you'll notice that I have this lovely PDF, which I have printed out and I have available for you online, which you will have for the practice test. You will not have it for the actual test. The reason that I have given you this PDF is that it gives you something to be able to write on and practice with. But for the actual test, you will need some sort of paper to work out the problems on. I will not be giving you a written version of the test. Secondly, I know you guys are looking at these problems going, ooh, I know the answers. But before we get started, let's compare and contrast the practice test with the actual test. So the practice test, which I'm going to be going over right now, is there a time limit? No, you can take as long as you want. I mean, you have to stop by May 27th, I believe. So that would be how many ever hours there are between right now and May 27th. Are you allowed to retake it with the practice test? Absolutely. You can take it as many times as you want. And open book or notes, it's up to you. Practice test is literally for you to practice. So some people use it as a way to test themselves, whether they know it, so then they would not use notes. Some people use it as another form of homework to work through more problems just to build up their understanding of them, in which case you would. Now let's talk about the actual test. The actual test, there's a 90-minute time limit. After that, the test will close and you won't be able to answer any further. Are you allowed to retake it? No. You just take the actual test once. And are you allowed to look in your notes? No. The actual test is closed notes, closed book. And this is obviously on the honor system. So I'm asking you, to really authentically take the test and let me know what you know and what you understood. One benefit that you're allowed to use for both of them, though, make sure you have a calculator. If you have a calculator that matches color coordinates with your carnivore of choice, awesome. And also I have this little support staff. This is Sharktopus, who's joining us along with Godzilla. They go together. They're both they both love engaging in mayhem on the high seas. Okay, so I've got my calculator right here. I've got some colors that's going to help me. Let's get started. And again, this is slightly different than the actual practice test. Oops, sorry. Because I'm going to be working here on paper, so it's easier for you to follow my steps. But the good news is the practice test and the actual test have the exact same setup. So if you take the practice test and you see a problem that doesn't make sense, you're not sure how to answer it, you can always ask me questions before you get to the actual test when you have a limited amount of time and you only get to take it once. So this is a good way to prepare. Okay, let's get started. So the first set of problems, and to be honest, Canvas is going to see these as, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different problems. I've grouped them because they're all related, but the Canvas will say this is problems, questions 1 through 5. So I'm going to give you values, numbers, and you're going to tell me all the sets these belong to. Now online, you're going to click the checkbox with your cursor, but I don't have checkboxes here, so we're just going to circle it. Let me move my colors out of the way, and let's get started. Okay, -9. Well, if you're negative, you're already at least in integers land, right? Is -9 an integer or a rational number? And the answer is -9 is an integer. Woohoo! But it was a slightly trick question because all integers are also rational numbers. Now remember, irrational is a really special category for numbers that if you can't and you won't and you don't, stop, Yes, irrational numbers are non-terminating, non-repeating decimals, so they're special. So this category only gets circled for certain numbers. So skip it and then real. Every number we come across up until, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the chapter. I want to say it's chapter 7, but I might be off. All the rest of the numbers in this class will be real numbers. Okay, 0. Well, 0 is actually the number for which whole was come up with. There's probably a better word there. So the whole number set is just the natural numbers with the addition of 0. They are also integers. They're also rational. Skip irrational, it's a special case, and go to real. Okay, 0.25. Kind of sneaky because it's a decimal, but in fact, it's really a rational number. This can be written as a fraction. It is not whole. It is not natural. It's not even an integer. It's rational because it's not a whole part. It's just a piece of one. Skip irrational, go to real, and sweep away the bunny fur. Oh my gosh, that stuff gets everywhere. Next up, 5. 5 is very exciting. 5 is natural. Can you have 5 sharktopuses? Yes, you can. So this is a natural number. And that's a little bit off because you can also have 0 sharktopuses, but why would you, right? You want at least 1 sharktopus. 0 is not natural. 5 sharktopuses, excellent. Excellent. Sorry, excellent. There we go. So it's a natural number. Then it's also a whole number. It's an integer. It's a rational number. Skip irrational and go to real. Now, I know what you're saying. This last one has got to be irrational. Look, it's the only one that hasn't been circled yet. And the answer is it is. But on the way that Canvas sets up tests, don't assume you'll get one of each because Canvas is going to pick certain numbers. So I've just told Canvas to pick how many ever of the numbers to give you. And so you might get different ones. So all of yours might be natural if you get lucky, or they might all be irrational. So don't assume it'll be one of each. For this practice test, I thought I'd go over one of each just to remind you what they're like. Okay, why is this irrational? Because you're right, it is irrational. It's also real, all real at this point. The reason is it's a square root or a radical that isn't nice. So what the heck does that mean? Well, it means that on your handy dandy calculator, if you go in and look at radical or square root of 21, it's nasty. If it's nasty, then it's Mrs. Irrational to you. So it's an irrational number, or if you just don't know the square root, if it's not one of the ones you memorized, it's irrational, assuming you memorized all the ones you were supposed to. Okay, that's the first one. Woohoo, 15 points are done, yay. Next question, I already see a mistake, which I will go in and fix because this is confusing. So I'm going to use my little whiteout, and of course, because I'm making a video right now, my whiteout's not going to work. Yay! But the intention here was that that be a squared. So I'll make sure that that's clearer when I go in and fix everything online. But basically, what you're being asked to do is I'm asking whether you understand order of operations in effect. So let me take a look at what this looks like. It's the opposite of brace, the opposite of bracket, the opposite of parenthesis, -4, the quantity squared, bracket, brace. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to say, okay, so there's a minus there, there's a minus there, there's a minus there. Now this is squared, so I get -4, -4. Okay, so the first thing I did was I went inside the parentheses, into the inside of the nesting, and then I went ahead and I wrote -4 squared out. Notice that because the minus was inside the parentheses, each one of the 4s has a minus. So we have in fact brought in an extra minus that we didn't see here because it was hidden inside the squared. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on. Right there, -4 times -4 is +16. Then just outside of that, the opposite of 16 is -16. The opposite of -16 is +16. And the opposite of +16 is -16. Now, do I have to go through all this work? Well, here's the thing. On an online test, you can't really show any work. So whatever work you're doing doesn't have to be organized this beautifully, and you can use a lot of different techniques. So you can write this out, which is order of operations, or you could simply go in and using the rules, remember, and here we go. I don't have my bats, so I'm going to use pens. What happens to 2 minuses? 2 minuses make a plus. 2 minuses make a plus. Okay, so 1, 2, that's a plus. 3, 4, that's a plus. 5. There are 5 minuses, which means we've got a plus and 1 left over that doesn't have a best friend. That minus is going to stick around, so we end up with a -16. So you could also do it that way. You could just count them up. Now, what is the sneaky thing about this problem? Well, the sneaky part of this problem is if you weren't paying attention to the squared, you'd see minus, 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 minus. You'd see 4 of them. You'd think, oh, it's positive. And now, seriously, what is it with math teachers, right? Because notice that I did offer that as an answer. So don't assume that just because the answer is there that it must be correct. I am going to give you a lot of different possibilities. You need to be on your toes. That's why we're doing the practice test, so that I'm going to tell you how sneaky I'm going to be, and then you're going to be like, not today, math teacher. And you're going to say, ooh, -16, this is the correct answer. Ha ha. And I'm going to say, yay, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you understand that. Okay, next up. Oh, everybody's favorite, another order of operations problem. As you can see, this one's a little bit more complicated. I don't just have minuses and a 4 and a squared. I've got lots of stuff going on. This is complicated enough that I am personally going to rewrite it. I would not be able to do this in my head. It is possible. Some people can. And again, you don't have to write out your work for me, but I would encourage you to, just so you can check. So I would write nice and big, and then remember order of operations, which is you find, let's see, you find the grouping symbols. So here's that one, and here's this one. I like to use colors, because when I use colors, my eyes can see what matches more easily. So when I do it like this, my brain can already see. Before it was kind of gobbledygook, and now I can see, these go together, these go together, these go together. So this is the inside here. And what I want to do is I want to do the sneaky, remember the sneaky implicit multiplication right there. You've got a couple ways you can do this. You can either multiply by 6 and then just have this minus weighting, or you can multiply by -6, which is what I'm going to do. So I've got 28b minus -2 times the quantity, -3b. Now I'm going to multiply, and I'm going to use the distributive property, minus 6b minus 6 and minus 6b. Now, if you are anything like me, your brain's like, oh, minus 6b, minus 6b, there's a pattern. Tell your brain, thank you, brain, you're brilliant, but that's not a helpful pattern right now. That is just a coincidence, and I'm not going to worry about it. It's kind of cool. Who knows why it's there? Just going to let it be. Okay, next step, I'm going to simplify, combine like terms. So while I'm coloring everything into its correct colors, and orange, you should be thinking about, okay, so what can we combine? And the answer is I can combine the b's. So minus 3b minus 6b. Altogether, that's negative 9b minus 6. Okay, so we take a breather right now. Take a moment. We say, okay, now what's next? The 28b is just going to have to hang out here. And I'm looking here, and inside the blue braces, I have what's inside the brackets. This can't be combined, so I look outside, and I've got a negative 2 here and a negative 6b there. And they are, even though I set them the same way, this one is subtraction, and this one is, you're right, this one's multiplication. Again, a sneaky multiplication, implicit. So I'm going to use the distributive property, again, to multiply. I'm going to be really careful. Now, personally, I am going to do the multiplication in my head, but if you want to write it down, I encourage you to do so. During a test, and certainly during my tests, there will never be a penalty. Well, I won't for this. When we're doing this the first time, at least, I won't be seeing your tests, but I never have a penalty for writing down too much. So I'm going to do negative 2 times negative 9b. Remember, 2 minuses make a plus, and get 18b. Negative 2 times negative 6 is plus 12. Now, here's the tricky thing. The minus 6b is not inside here. It's outside, so you don't multiply it. There's a minus 6b right there. So far, so good? Okay. Next thing, you're starting to get into the rhythm. Hopefully, you see you multiply, combine like terms. Multiply, combine like terms. So let's go ahead and combine like terms here. I get 28b minus, and let's see what's actually going on inside. Again, I only have one constant, so it's just going to hang, that 12. But I can combine the 18b minus 6b, and I get 12b plus 12. And again, my brain's like, whoa, what a coincidence. And I say, thank you, brain. Yeah, it is a coincidence. It's kind of interesting. I think the teacher had a lot of 6s and 12s in their brain when they were writing this, but I don't think that's something we have to worry about right now. So thanks, brain. Brains are really great at finding, patterns. They're awesome. Okay, next step. Everything inside is taken care of. So now I look outside and I see there's a minus here, and this minus affects all of these. So you can think of this as the opposite of everything. So the opposite of this or the opposite of that, or some people prefer to think of this as a -1, a -1 that distributes through. Either way, you're going to have 28b minus 12b minus 12. So far, so good? And then finally, I can combine 28b minus 12b, and I think I get 16b minus 12. Now let's go up and look at the possible answers. So this is, I feel better because I look up at the answers, and each of the answers has a 16 and a 12 in it. So I got the right numbers. Let's see, I want 16b to be positive and 12 to be negative. So I look through here, 16b minus 12. Again, just because the answer appears doesn't mean it's necessarily correct, but I do feel better that the answer I got was correct there. I would really encourage, well, the answer I got was listed at least, so I didn't make any really big mistakes, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I just wanted to show this is a lot of steps. I would not encourage that you try to do this in your head. Just because tests, when you're taking tests, most people, 90 to 95% of people do worse on a test than they would do just any other time because stress makes them worse. Believe it or not, about 5 or 10% of my students do better. So when they're taking a test, they actually do better than they would normally do, which is an interesting reaction. Those are folks who do really well on tests. But the rest of us, myself included, I tend to make little mistakes all through here. So writing out all the steps gives me a chance to go back and I can double check my work if I want to. Okay, we're at 20 minutes. We finished about half of the test, I think. We finished 2 pages of the PDF. And let's see what the next one is. Okay, now this problem is weird. And the reason it's weird is because when writing online tests, I know that my students are brilliant, and brilliant students love to psych out tests. And so if I give you a problem where I said, solve this equation, and then I gave you a list of possible answers, I know, I would hope that many people would actually just take the answers, plug them in, and see if they work. That would be a brilliant, easy way to do it, wouldn't it, Sharktopus? And Sharktopus agrees. So does Godzilla, who's off to the side. Hey, yeah, he does too. Or she, sorry, Godzilla is a mom. Actually, I don't know how either of them identify, so I should probably say they. So they both agree that that would be a brilliant way to take a test. So I have not given you the answers. Notice what I've given you. And I said, be sure to read the question before you answer this one. Solve for A and then check your answers. So my problem is A minus 2 equals 2A over 4 plus 2. Obviously, I had 2's in mind. I think this is a very pretty problem, with the exception of, fractions, not everyone's favorite. So then I said, choose the answer that matches the equation. Let me put this in yellow. The equation you got when you checked. So what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to get the answer, check your answer, and then the checked answer will look like one of these. See? I'm thinking about these things. So I'm giving you something interesting to do. So let's go ahead and solve this. Now, some people will notice that the 2 and the 4 can be canceled. If you notice that, if you can see that it can be reduced, you're allowed to reduce it. I'm going to assume that a lot of people are just going to do this problem without noticing that because, under stress on a test, you're like, So I'm not going to go ahead and reduce that, and you don't have to. It doesn't make the problem that much simpler to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clear fractions. So to clear fractions, my least common denominator or my least common multiple is 4. It's actually my only denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 4 and multiply it times everything. So what does that mean? Well, let's see. What color will we use? Can I use blue? I think I could use blue. Let me see. I'll do like a little box. There we go. Box. 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 What am I doing? Oh my goodness. A minus 2 equals 2A over 4 plus 2. And in the box, I'm going to put 4's. 4 times A, 4 times the first one, 4 times the second one, right? On the other side. Now here, I'm going to write this as 4 over 1. 4 is equal to 4 over 1. So I just choose whichever format makes more sense. 4, that's hilarious. When we're looking at a variable or a whole number, I'm going to use the number 4. When we're looking at the fraction, I'm going to use 4 over 1 and then 4. So each of the 4 terms gets a 4. I'm going to multiply. And so here I get 4A minus 4 times 2 is 8. I should do this multiplication. Sorry, I wasn't explicit about that. And then on the other side, the 4's cancel, which is good because that's the whole point of using it. And I get 2A plus 8. Now, be really cautious with this. It's easy for your brain to see 8's on both sides and want to cancel them. And in fact, one is a minus 8 and one is a positive 8. So be careful about that. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, 4a and 2a. I'm going to move my a's over there. So I'm going to subtract 2a from both sides. Okay, so I get 2a minus 8 equals 8. Add 8 to both sides. I get 2a equals 16, or a. And if you want, you divide both sides by 2. A equals 8. Now remember that that is not the answer we're looking for. So what you want to do with this is you want to keep going and you want to check. Now remember that when you check, you always check the original problem. So my original problem was a minus 2 equals 2a over 4 plus 2. So let's check. 8 minus 2, is that equal to 2 times 8 over 4 plus 2? So let's check. 8 minus 2 on the left is 6. On the right, I've got 16 over 4 plus 2. So is that equal to? And then 16 over 4 is 4 plus 2. So 6 equal to 4 plus 2. Yes, 6 equals 6. And this is the answer I want you to give me. So right there. 6 equals 6. Does that make sense? It's a little bit weird. But basically I've just tried to write a problem that will correctly tell me, or it'd be a pretty good gauge on whether or not you all know how to solve an equation and check it. I think of all the problems on this test, I think this is probably the hardest just because it's the weirdest. And let me know if I'm wrong. It may be that one of the others, you're like, oh, that's no big deal. We understood completely. It's this other one that's hard. Okay, this one is in the running for hardest problem though. Hopefully you got some practice with this. Solve this formula for B. So I've got P equals 2 times the quantity A plus B. And I want to get the B out of the equation. I want to convert this to B equals blah, 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 blah. That's what I want. That's the equation I'm looking for. And you'll notice that all of the possible answers have B equals. So let's work out what we want to do. If I want to isolate B, I've got a couple of options. I am probably going to multiply out. So let me go ahead and multiply this. Multiply 2, and so I get P equals 2A plus 2B. Now I want to solve for B, so I'm going to move A out of the way. So minus 2A. Okay. Then I get P minus 2A equals 2B. What's the next step? Well, the next step is either to divide by 2 or multiply by 1/2. And it's up to you which way you do it. So you can go ahead and say, I'm going to go ahead and divide everybody by 2. So P over 2 minus 2A over 2 equals 2B over 2. Or okay, so I'm giving you 2 options. These are kind of the 2 big ways to do it. Either you divide individually by 2 or you divide the whole left side by 2. Both are acceptable. And then I'm going to get on the left side, I get P over 2 minus A equals B, or B equals P over 2 minus A. Woohoo! Now with this one, if I do it this way, if I look up here, B equals P over 2, B equals P over 2 minus A, that's right there. Woohoo! Now what should I do if I work it out this way instead? Because there are lots of different ways to solve this problem. And the trick is, you know, sometimes the answers on a multiple choice test aren't the answers you're expecting. So let's take a look at what's happening here. So first off, the 2's cancel. So I get P minus 2A all over 2 equals B, or B equals P minus 2A all over 2. So you go up to the top and you're like, oh no, none of them look like this. They're not in this form. So don't panic. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It means that you worked it out in a slightly different way than I did. Okay, so this is one time when a multiple choice test is a lot worse than a traditional essay math test. Because in an essay math test, if you did it this way, I'd say, yeah, that's correct. This is basically the same answer I got over here, just a slightly different form. But what should you do with this? Well, if you've got a big old giant fraction, remember, if there's one term in the denominator, you can always split them up. So this is the trick, is if you get a big fraction, you can always split it up, and then you get P over 2 minus A. And it's not that this form is not correct, it's just that this form is not the form that I gave you an option for in the top. So you might need, in this last one, you might need to do some wiggling around to make it fit, to make your solution fit the form of the answer I give you. Last thing, on the practice test, you're done at this point. In the actual test, there's an extra credit question. And I'm just going to ask you something random, and I'm going to tell you that it's not random. I've made plans for it. But I'm going to ask you a question, and you can answer anything you want. So if I said, what's your favorite food? And you said the planet Mars, I would just give you that point. And I wouldn't exactly know what you mean, but I would assume that there's some cool restaurant that serves a dish called the planet Mars or something. Who knows? Or maybe you are an ancient evil that eats planets. It's possible, could happen. They need to learn math too, right? So just remember to answer the extra credit. Make sure you've answered all the questions on the test, and then woohoo, turn it in. And then have a dance party. Awesome. Congratulations on making it through. As you're watching this video, hopefully you have found the blank version of this, and the notes are available up online. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me or ask a tutor. Woohoo. Woohoo and math on, guys. Have a good one.